So my name is Stanley Scism, and this is my beloved father, Harry Scism, and we are here greeting friends and relatives at this Christmas and New Year's time. And we were talking about, uh, let's see, earliest in time would be the one who you've known the longest, probably, who we would be able to mention, would be Faith Wagner, because Faith is your first cousin.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, your mother and Faith's mom were sisters, and so that's. Then also, of course, the next relatives on that side of the family that we also know would be the Higgins, since Matt, Jana, and Katie, who are the children of Renee, and Renee was the daughter of Jane and Art Hills. Jane was the younger sister of uh, of Marjorie. So that means then that Tim and Renee were your first cousins also. And so then Renee's kids, who are Matt and Jana and Katie. And so we're greeting you, Matt, Jana, Katie, and your families, saying hi to all of you. And yeah, and then of course there are other relatives that we've lost contact with and wish we were in better contact with. But some of the Fern Green's kids and her descendants and so on. And the Gages, a bunch of the Gages, which we haven't been in touch with for decades. And then, of course, another one would be, of course, Ernest Moyer, who is a brother to Marjorie. So Ernest's son, Mike Moyer, was a first cousin of Dad. Mike has passed away, but Mike's son, one of his sons, Rick, is in ministry in the Portland area. So greetings to Rick and his family. And then on the Harusa side, there's all the people. Of course, Carolyn lives with her husband, Dennis Spanner, in the Portland area, and their daughters have married and have their families. So Dennis and Carolyn and your kid and your daughters and grandkids. So we're hi from us here. And let's see. And then once you move into Idaho, there's Steve Harusa and his wife Valerie, who was from the Rudsons, and their whole family living in Caldwell, Napa, Boise area. And then you go to when we go to the Rupert area, then there of course Jim, Eugene's family, Cindy, Carrie, Deanna is still there. Trina is in Twin Falls with her family, and then there's as you go further east in Idaho, we get to Pocatello and Idaho Falls, and there are some of the Hardin side. So the Hardin is Molly. Not Molly, Bonnie Harusa, who was a first cousin of Mom, and Bonnie's kids and their families, and they have a large larger family with more kids, and so the extended, and there was all these Hardens everywhere, and so all of the very many Hardens who are everywhere, we greet you all, because whether you're living in Idaho or Utah or Colorado or wherever you are now. And when we go to Utah, of course, some of the Hardens are there, as far as I know. And in Colorado, we know that Jolene is there with her family. So that's more relatives. And then goodness, not just are the relatives, but all of the colleagues, people we've done ministry with over the years, and friends. This is so extensive. It's so many people, and over the many years back, all of the Yadens that we worked with, and C.H. Yaden and Ellis Scism were friends back in Bible school in Oakland in 1930. So our families have been friends now for almost 100 years. This is 2024, almost 2025, and they met and became friends in 1930, so this is literally 95 years that our families have been friends. And then there's all the Dillons across in the Northwest, the many Dillons, and that we've worked with. Everything, of course, the one we knew best was Norman Dillon and Rupert, but there was also Albert Dillon, who did an excellent job in Salem, and so many other, Jim and Jerry Dillon, different ones who some of these are still with us, and some of them have passed away. And then there's the so many other people. Of course, some have passed away. Tiny Crossley, Vernil Crossley, and then their son, Derry Crossley, who worked in missions as well. And let's see, there was Gene Zemke, who pastored Puyallup, a live growing church in Puyallup for a long time. There was Howard West, who was one of the old-time pastor, Brother LaCrosse. So many people in the area, and then it come down to the present day with brothers Woodson and Graves who are there. So there's this association and working together for a long, long time. And so before I go out from the Northwest into other parts, and you were mentioning the relatives here in Ohio that we were with for Christmas time, on Christmas Day. So all of the Helen's 3 kids, their families, and Loretta, and are all here in Ohio, and so that's a joy to be with them.
Well, thank you, Stan. That's been very interesting. And we do have quite a few relatives, but unfortunately, we are not able to see them very frequently. And that's a pity, because they're, many of them are very interesting people. They've also had a full life with a lot of activity. So it's a real privilege to meet with them and hear about their lives and what they've been doing.
Yes. And then, of course, there's all the people that you know from all over the world.
Yes.
I remember when you were first Foreign Missions Director and you would talk about coming back from Jamaica. You mentioned Bishop Husland,
Yes.
and Sammy Stewart, and you. I've never met Bishop Husland. Tell me something about Bishop Husland. What's he like?
Oh, Bishop Huslin, he is one of the very well-known ministers from Jamaica. And it's always a privilege to be with these men, because many of them have already lived and served the Lord for a number of years.
Yeah.
And they're acquainted with people from many different fellowships and organizations. So we have a great fellowship in the United Pentecostal Church. There are so many very well-known people in their circles, and they pastor many churches and are very busy in the work of the Lord.
And Sammy Stewart was at one time the pastor in the capital city in Kingston, right?
I think so. I believe I heard that.
And he was just a dynamic minister. He taught in Delhi on several occasions. We had asked him to teach the class in pastoring, how to pastor.
Yes.
So that class came up every 3 years, and he would come and teach. He was very, very, very good. And now he's retired and living in New York City.
What's that?
Now he's retired and living in New York City.
That's Sammy Stewart.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, and I remember also early in your time as foreign missions director, you talked about New Zealand, the Maoris, and how you were interested in the Maori singing, the Maori worship.
Yes.
And it was a joy being associated with them. And let's see, I remember also, of course, early references to Brother Fujibayashi in Japan.
Yes, Brother Fujibayashi and his wife, they were very, very precious friends.
Yeah.
For a number of years. And my father was acquainted with some of the Japanese pastors, especially those who had come to the United States and ministered in some of our churches. That's how my father got acquainted with some of the Japanese pastors. And so then when I became involved with Japanese pastors and my father was traveling with me a little bit at that time in Japan. So we were able to take one Japanese pastor with us as we went to different churches in Japan. And this was a very interesting time for my father and for the Japanese pastor who was with us. He was telling me, the Japanese pastor was telling me about my father. He said, your father, every time we go into a hotel to stay for one night, he said, your father will empty out everything in his suitcase and put it in the dresser drawer in the room. And he would just unpack everything and put it in the dresser drawer as though he were going to stay there for a week or two. And the Japanese pastor always got so amused with my father because he would unpack almost everything from his suitcase and put it in the dresser drawer. And then the next morning, he had to take everything out of the dresser in the room and put it back in his suitcase and get ready to move on. But we really enjoyed the Japanese people very, very much.
Um, Another place that you talked to, I remember a photo. There was a picture of Loretta and me sitting in a little children's swing set with two, I think they are Japanese children. I do not know if they're Japanese pastors' children or maybe it was a Hong Kong picture. I do not know if those kids are Japanese or Chinese.
Okay.
But there is a little small swing set, and while the grown-ups were talking in the house,
Yeah.
we four children, these two and Loretta and I, went into the backyard and we were sitting in the swing and pushing it, swinging it back and forth.
Yes.
And Loretta and I couldn't speak their language and they couldn't speak our language, but that didn't stop us from playing together.
Yeah.
And and then you saw, I guess you just wondered where did the kids go, and you came out in the backyard and saw us there and swinging together and took a picture of us. And do you know where that picture was taken? Do you know whether that was in Japan or China?
I think that was in
Hong Kong.
Japan.
Yeah, or Hong Kong. And then there's I'm trying to remember different places that you have mentioned, and I remember also your mentioning about the Ethiopians church and the crusades they had.
Yes.
And of course many people talked about that, and you talked about how much you enjoyed being with Brother Teclamarian.
Yes.
And
Brother Teclamarian and his wife came from Ethiopia to the States to be in a conference with Brother
Samuel Smith. Brother Samuel Smith.
Samuel Smith, yes.
Apostolic World Christian Fellowship.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we had a wonderful time together. Brother and Sister Teclamarian came to the conference that Brother Smith was holding, and he was one of the speakers, and it was a great blessing to the conference. But for me and my wife, it was a very special treat because by that time, Brother Teckley and his wife, they had become very precious friends of ours. We had been with them in Ethiopia more than one time, and we really had a great love for them. Brother Teckley's wife, now Sister Mary was her name. His first wife that we had known, first of all, she had passed away. So now we knew Sister Mary. And we had wonderful fellowship with all of them. When we went to Ethiopia, just to be with Brother Teckley and the church there, we couldn't see them as often as we liked because they were also very busy. They had many meetings and a lot of activity in their church. But we enjoyed going there so much, and their fellowship and their worship was so special. And we just can never forget the wonderful time of fellowship we had with the church in Ethiopia. And we miss that very much. Now that we don't make those trips to Ethiopia like we used to go rather frequently, we don't have the close fellowship that we once had. And we're missing that very much. I am hoping and praying that someday that door will be opened again. And we can again have wonderful fellowship with the church in Ethiopia and lay aside some of the differences in doctrine that we may have. But as long as we all believe in the oneness of God and being baptized in water in Jesus' name, filled with the Holy Spirit, these are things that are important to all of us.
Yeah.
And we need to place strong emphasis on the things that will prepare us to be a part of the bride of Christ. We don't want to miss that opportunity.
And another group I remember you telling me about was the True Jesus Church.
Yes, the True Jesus Church, which is well known in China.
Yeah.
And many of them are true believers in the oneness of God, and they love the Lord just as we do. So we should have a close fellowship together. And we will always be grateful for the times we have had together with the Ethiopian church and the True Jesus Church.